Welcome to Wines We Drink, a podcast for wine lovers and learners. I'm Charlotte Norsworthy Varnum, and together with my counterpart Keith Herndon, we'll be exploring a new wine each week. Keith is a lover of wine, and I'm a learner of wine, and we hope you'll sip along with us. Welcome, everyone, to our podcast, Wines We Drink. I'm Charlotte Norsworthy Varnum, and with me today, as always, is my co-host Keith Herndon, a certified wine sommelier.
Thank you, Charlotte. I'm so excited to drink our wonderful wine selection with you today as we close out an amazing fourth season.
Closing out season 4 today. Amazing. I can't believe it. It's been such a fun time with you this summer. We've had so much good wine and great conversation. There's really no way I can be sad, but I kind of am.
Right, well, I'm with you today. Rather than being sad, I'm looking back over the previous 11 episodes and thinking, that was some great wine we drank this season.
I totally agree. I mean, I'm often kidding with you about how much you obsess over the selections that we feature, but all kidding aside, I am so happy that you do because I get to enjoy the fruits of your obsession, and so does our audience. And speaking of our audience, hello. We're so happy to have you here along with us on our wine journey. We really do this for you, and we appreciate your support. If you've missed any of our shows from this season or from the previous 3 seasons, they're all available on the major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We also have episode guides organized by season at wineswedrink.com.
So now, Charlotte, we're going to have to bottle up our emotion, so to speak, right? and power through today's season finale. It's time to turn our attention to today's wine.
Well, Keith, how are you going to distract me from my emotions? What fantastic wine are we drinking today?
Charlotte, last week we were in France's Bordeaux region for an exceptional red blend value. We're staying in France, but we're headed northeast to the Loire Valley, more specifically to Sancerre.
I'm so excited about drinking another fantastic French wine. But we're in that kind of time of the season where we're featuring reds in general, so you're going to have to explain a red wine from Sancerre for me.
Okay. As I said on a previous show, we like to think outside of the box a bit on wines we drink. So when I was introduced to the wine that we're drinking today, I knew I had to include it in one of our episodes. I'm just so enamored with it. It just made sense to conclude the season with it, and I think as we go through, you'll understand why this is a special wine. Right?
Okay. Well, spill the deets. I'm eager to know more about a red wine from Sancerre.
Charlotte, you're absolutely right that most wine drinkers don't expect a red wine from Sancerre. This region is famous, I'd even say synonymous, with the white grape Sauvignon Blanc.
Right.
So I was more than surprised when I had the chance to drink a Sancerre Rouge, which, by the way, is 100% Pinot Noir. And I was even more surprised when I immediately fell for it. I'm so excited to share it with you today. The wine we're drinking is a 2020 Sancerre Rouge, a Pinot Noir from Domaine Gerard Fou.
So why am I not surprised then that you've fallen in love with yet another new wine? I'm beginning to think you have a fickle palate.
Guilty as charged, okay? My palate portfolio is constantly expanding, and I don't ever plan to stop. It's just too much fun to explore new wines and find a bottle that speaks to me, and this one speaks to me. I think part of the fun in finding... I think part of the fun is finding these wines that are somewhat rare, right?
So today's wine's rare?
Well, it's not a unicorn. Okay, it actually does exist, but let's put it in the proper context. The entire Sancerre wine region is only about 7,400 acres. Compare that to the Bordeaux region that we talked about last week, which is like 270,000 plus acres, right? The vast majority of the Sancerre region, it's only 7,400 acres, is almost all Sauvignon Blanc, okay?
Which makes sense.
Only 18%, or just 1,300 acres, is planted in Pinot Noir vines. And many of those vines, like the wine we're drinking today, have survived over the years. They're incredibly old vines. Today's wine is from vines that are over 60 years old.
Wow.
By the way, Sauvignon Blanc and Pinot Noir are the only two varietals allowed in Sancerre.
Wow. Okay.
Right? So, it's just really interesting how we're drinking a red wine from Sancerre. Most people don't even know they exist.
Right. And the fact that there are two varietals allowed in Sancerre is crazy, and it does sound like a rare gem. So please fill our glasses so that we can begin the experience.
Happy to do so. Okay, I'm going to pour you a glass.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I'm going to pour my glass.
As you're pouring it in, I'm going to stick with this gemstone metaphor that I've been using this season to describe reds. The color of this is really a deep ruby red. It's very majestic looking.
Yeah, its great color is just the beginning. I want you to give this wine a great big sniff.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Immediately it is like a cherry explosion.
Yeah, it's a cherry bomb, all right. Pinot Noir tends to have those intense cherry aromas, and this one more than meets those expectations. Right?
There's definitely a cherry is pretty much all you can think about, but I will say there's some other red fruits in there for sure. I feel like raspberry is pretty prominent, but also there's like some smokiness happening here.
Those red fruits are the classic Pinot Noir profile, right?
Right.
But that smoke you're picking up, I believe, is a reflection of the terroir.
Okay.
Right? The winery's notes explain that these vineyards are on clay and sandy soils that they describe as flinty. The note adds, quote, "On flinty soils, it acquires a smoky nose and a minerality that are strikingly deep," end quote.
That's interesting how the soils kind of directly translate into aroma, because I'm often associating that with taste, and so flinty definitely feels like it would be smoky. So I'm interested to try it and see what the flavor is like.
Yeah, so let's go in for that first sip. Yes.
Oh, wow. Just like on the nose, that wine's flavor is cherry dominated in the best way. It's juicy, it's fruity, but you're also getting some baking spices. I would even say maybe some hints of vanilla.
Man, your taste buds are in great shape today as we end the season. Right? Like 12 weeks of tasting wine, right? It's those combination of aromas and flavors that make this bottle so special. I find it expressing the terroir with those smoky aromas, and the cherry reflects nicely on the grapes, and then you get that spice and vanilla the winemaker intended from some oak aging. This wine spent 6 months in oak barrels, which isn't overdoing it, right? Mm-hmm. It's just enough to add some interesting elements to the wine's finish.
Right, just enough for some depth. And really, too, about that finish, it's smooth, it's velvety at the end, and you get that cherry to the very end as well, into a place that's almost creamy.
Yeah, another excellent observation. This is a medium-bodied red to begin with, but the winemaker had this wine undergo malolactic fermentation. That's a process where the malic acid found in the wine is converted into lactic acid. And yes, that's the same lactic acid that's in milk. In wine, it contributes to that creaminess and that smoothiness that you described.
You mentioned earlier that this wine came from vines that are over 60 years old. Why is that important to know about a wine like this?
Yeah, old vine wines are some of my favorites, okay? As a grapevine gets older, they naturally lose productivity, which means fewer grapes. Most vineyards have to cull their older vines and continually replant so as to maintain, grape production. They need enough grapes. But there are these wonderful places where older vines have been allowed to survive. The result may be fewer grapes per vine, right? But those grapes that are produced tend to be more concentrated, more flavorful, and then that translates into a more robust wine. And I think today's selection qualifies as a robust wine.
I mean, I would absolutely agree. Robust indeed. And it's so interesting to learn about how older vines impact this. I just picture it as these seasoned veteran vines injecting knowledge into their grapes that they are producing. And it's one of the more aromatic and cherry-forward Pinot Noirs that I've ever had. So that brings me to my next question. How did you discover this wine? We haven't really talked about a trip yet or a tasting or anything like that.
Well, unfortunately, I haven't been to Sancerre, but it's another on my long bucket list of wine regions to visit. I will make it there. You know, I just have to live long enough with enough money in the bank to make it through this list, okay?
You will. There's no doubt in my mind. And then I'll get to taste all of those discoveries.
Well, you know, sometimes you don't have to travel far to find wonderful wine. This is a relatively new find that happened for me in early April when my wife and I attended a 5-course wine dinner at one of our best local restaurants. A big shout out to the 5 and 10.
Oh my gosh, yeah, a 5-course dinner at the 5 and 10. That sounds like a wonderful evening.
It was, okay? So I'm going to do some recounting here, okay?
Okay, please do.
The dinner opened with oysters on the half shell accompanied by a crisp cremant, remarkably similar to the one that we featured in episode 6 this season.
Okay, I wondered.
Okay. The second course was grilled mahi paired with a petit chablis from Burgundy. I'm going to come back to the third course.
Okay.
The fourth course was braised short rib paired with a Cabernet from Saumur Champigny. And we ended with a tome cheese and a strawberry jam paired with an amazing dessert-style wine. It was a Chenin Blanc from 1979.
Wow.
It was not overly sweet, but it was a perfect wine to end the evening with.
How special. Wow, that sounds so tasty top to bottom. But you did skip the third course, so can we circle back?
Yes, because that's when the magic happened for me.
Okay.
The wine that you and I shared today was served as our third course pairing with coq au vin.
Oh, wow.
The chicken was deboned and served almost as a chicken stew with onions, carrots, and mushrooms. I mean, I was in heaven with that pairing. Overall, it was one of the best meals that I can ever recall eating, and I've had some great meals. But this was a special night, and it endeared me to all of the wines we had. But this Pinot Noir, this Sancerre Rouge, stood out. It was different.
Wow. I am so jealous. I mean, hearing you recount that meal course by course just underscores how special the relationship between wine and food really can be.
Yes, I think it was the idea of pairing wine and food that attracted me to study wine in the first place. I mean, it was certainly an impetus for getting serious in my wine education and just being able to continually learn and enjoy a meal like that at the 5 and 10 and come away with new discoveries. It's what it's all about.
Absolutely. I mean, pairings that you would have never dreamt up in your wildest imagination. That meal sounds amazing and inspirational. And to know that you enjoyed that right here in our little town of Athens, Georgia. So another shout out to the 5 and 10. Perhaps we'll celebrate the end of the season there soon.
Hey, that's a great idea. Your own.
Okay, so I'm not even going to have to ask you what food you would pair with this wine then, because I know. And I doubt you'd want to try to top that coq au vin. But I will ask you about a cheese pairing. What would you suggest?
You're right about that dish. It was amazing, But as for my cheese pairing for this wine, I'm going to go with a slightly aged Gruyere.
Okay.
Our wine is really dry with some nice acidity, and that works with the high fat content of the cheese. Gruyere is also subtle in that it is slightly salty, slightly nutty, but nothing that's going to overtake the wonderful fruit in our wine, right? I've placed some slices of Gruyere on a plate for you there, so give that a try with some sips of our Sancerre Rouge.
Ooh, don't mind if I do.
I'm going to join you in that.
Mm-hmm.
Slightly salty, slightly nutty. That's a good description of the cheese.
That is them. I mean, you're getting both of those there in tandem. And you're right about that acidity kind of cutting through both of those things, and the fattiness of that cheese really softens the cheese quickly, and it works with that creamy texture of this wine that we were just talking about.
Yeah, the alcohol by volume on this wine is only 13.5%, which means you can feel good about serving this wine at a dinner party. It's not over the top with alcohol at all.
Right, and that dinner that you described, it sounded quite extravagant, but how would this wine fit into that elaborate meal then? Is it actually affordable or is it also elaborate?
Well, that meal wasn't cheap.
Right.
You're right about that. But the experience overall was worth it.
Oh, I can totally see that.
But the wines paired with the food were reasonable, and our Sancerre Rouge especially so. At the time of this recording, the Vivino app listed the national average price at $26.
Wow. Okay.
And I think that is an excellent price for a wine of this quality, right? James Suckling, one of the famous reviewers, awarded this wine 92 points and praised its succulent finish.
Great description.
Right? It gets 4 stars on the Vivino app and is considered among the top 6% of wines in the world on that app.
I mean, Keith, that's another great wine selection win. For Wines We Drink, you've done it again with a fantastic bottle. Our listeners are going to be able to snag this for under $30. I think I said it last year at the end of that season, but I'm going to say it again. You've brought your A game to this season's conclusion.
Well, thanks. I owe a lot of this to the 5 and 10 selection of wines that they served with that fantastic 5-course dinner. But you just mentioned conclusions, But now that you mentioned conclusions, I mean, I guess it's time for us to bring this season home.
I know. It is time. It's time for our short break, but we're going to come right back. We'll return in a moment with this final segment that we call the finish. The finishing finish, if you will. So we're not only going to finish today's episode, but we're also going to put a wrap on season 4. But now it's time for me to enjoy some more of the Sancerre Rouge and Gruyere. Welcome back, everyone, to Wines We Drink. This is the portion of the show that we call the finish. Keith, this is the finish, not only for this episode, but it's also the end of season 4.
I think we've had a great season drinking wonderful wine. But I'm going to ask you, I'm going to put you on the spot. If you learned one thing this season, what would it be?
Our go-to. It's probably about kind of reinforcing a lesson that I've already learned.
And what is that?
That great value in wine is out there if you're willing to look in new places and try new things.
Excellent, right? If anything this season, we've tried to introduce our audience to new wine experiences.
Right.
We've talked about thinking outside of the box, and I believe we delivered on that this year.
I mean, yes, I totally agree. I mean, check out some of the episodes. We had a wild yeast Viognier from Temecula Valley, a dry Riesling from the Finger Lakes, a California Valdigi that was misidentified for decades as a Gamay, and we even had a red fleshed grape called Saperavi from the country of Georgia. I didn't even know that red fleshed grapes existed.
Those are great examples, and I think we've also demonstrated that you can find value when drinking a more well-known varietal, but from a place you wouldn't expect it, right?
Right.
Gewürztraminer is normally associated with Austria, but our California version from episode 3 was excellent. And the Pinot Noir from today's episode was French, but not from Burgundy, where you normally associate a great Pinot Noir. Ours came from Sancerre and cost less than a third of what a comparable Burgundy would sell for. I like finding wine values and sharing them, with the best podcast co-host that's out there.
Oh, shucks. I mean, and yeah, finding those values, like we were saying, in unexpected places. And, the feeling is mutual, co-host. I love getting to share so many great wines with you. You make this so fun, and it's really an entertaining gig. What do you say that we keep it going?
Well, I'm in. So did we just agree to season 5?
Yes, we did. I know a lot can happen over the next 8 months, but it's never too early to plan, right? Season 5, let's put it on the calendar.
Oh, it's there. We now have 48 shows, counting this one, behind us. So why not? Let's push for that even 60.
Even 60.
At least.
The age of the vines, of the wine that we discussed today. Awesome. I mean, and really a huge thanks goes to our audience, right, for being such wonderful supporters. We really wouldn't even be considering another season if we had no one listening, right? So your support is really sustaining us here.
Yeah, and I can't end without saying this. I mean, your votes, your audience votes propelled us to the 2 wins in this year's Taste Awards. I mean, I know we talked about that at the beginning of the season. Mm-hmm. We've tried not to be too braggadocio this season, and we haven't really spoken about it since, I don't think.
No,
right?
I don't think so.
But to know your support led us to be recognized as the best food or drink podcast and the best lifestyle podcast. It's beyond humbling, right?
I totally agree.
Right. And this success has propelled us into another project. Mm-hmm. So, Charlotte, we're going to be doing a book.
That
right?
we are.
And we've been contracted by Innovation Inc. Publishing, and we're producing a book called Wine Conversations, Exploring Mysteries and Myths. And it's going to be available, all things according to plan, next spring.
Fingers crossed.
Sometime in March or April.
Right. Before we even get to season 5, we've got another project right in front of us, and I'll get to edit it, which is so awesome. I'm fulfilling my producer role yet again.
Oh, well, I mean, we wouldn't be doing this without such amazing listeners behind us. I mean, thank you for finding us among the thousands of podcast choices you have. We want to bring you value wines. I hope we represent your podcast value proposition.
Absolutely. We hope that we are bringing you value. And thank you for joining us. And thank you, Keith. That's the finish. Episode 12 of season 4.
Time to sign off and say goodbye until season 5. I'm so glad that we agreed to do that today.
I know. I'm glad we figured that out. Cheers to you.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to Wines We Drink. Listen to our other episodes anywhere you get your podcasts, and be sure to follow us on Instagram at The Wines We Drink, and check out our episode guides at wineswedrink.com. Cheers.